Okay, let's get going. All right, welcome to the Lowdown, everybody. I am Beth Robinette. I am your host. We are speaking today with my good friend Guido from True Grass Farm. And just real quick, I would like to point out that we're able to offer the Lowdown, our marketing series, and our trade promotions to producers free of cost. But of course, it's not free to put on, so we always appreciate donations by our community and other supporters. So if you feel like chipping into the kitty so we can keep doing this, you can use the QR code on your screen to make a donation, or the link is in the chat. Of course, any size of gift has a measurable impact, because even if you give us $1, we can still say, hey, we have producers supporting this program, and that helps us go to other funders and leverage that contribution. Okay, enough of that. For our programming today, we're going to do introductions. We're going to, with our guests, we'll have a little bit of a conversation for 45 minutes of prepared questions, and then we'll open up for Q&A. Feel free to put your questions in the chat as we go along. We'll be gathering those. And on the screen, you'll just see our community agreements, which boil down to be chill, babies, be kind to each other. We want to have a good time, and hopefully learn some stuff. And of course, I've never had an issue with that in this community, because everybody always brings their cool curiosity. All right. Without further ado, I'm going to introduce our incredible guest. So Guido Frosini is a passionate and dedicated farmer and rancher who runs True Grass Farms in Tamales, which is just north of San Francisco, about an hour and a half. He was raised in Florence, Italy by an Italian father and a mother from Oakland, and he returned to his family's 1,200-acre operation, which has been in his family since 1867, in 2008 to work with his great aunt. Over the years, he transformed the land using sustainable agriculture practices that emphasize grassland management and land regeneration. Guido specializes in raising Wagyu and Angus cattle on pure coastal grass, ensuring that his livestock are happy and healthy, and that the meat reflects the changing seasons. His philosophy centers on working with the land to create a resilient ecosystem, and he believes in the importance of educating consumers about the value of sustainably grown meat. And of course, specifically today, we're here to talk about something adjacent to your meat operation, but I'm sure it's all interconnected, as all things are. But today we're going to be talking about agritourism and how bringing guests to the farm kind of contributes to the business. Hi, Guido.
Beth, good morning, and thank you for that great introduction. And excited to be here.
So first, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background in the ranch, and what all enterprises do you have going on there?
I'll start with a brief summary of like how I got here. So I grew up, like you said, in Italy. I grew up in the city in Florence, but Florence is a small town, considered provincial at just under 300,000 people, very close to the countryside. The countryside was walking distance, and the idea of food is intertwined with our life. Hospitality is revered as sacred in like most values that we learn from mythology to daily activities. And it's something that just kind of stuck with me until I came here to the States for college when I was 19. And I got to meet a lot of my American family that I knew of, but had very little experience with. So a couple years in college, I realized how little I had learned in Italy. I had learned the importance of the relationship to food, of hospitality, but very little of like how things were produced, about agriculture in general. And I had the luck to have a great aunt that had immigrated from Calabria, and eventually married into a ranch here in California. And she had a commercial cow-calf operation. So I asked her if I could come help, And she said, as long as you continue studying. So I continued studying at JC. I continued with botany. And I worked for her for over 12 years until she passed. I was the only nephew that helped her. And so I was lucky enough that before her passing, she transferred 100 acres into my name. And that's how I'm in Westmoreland County. It's one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. It's extremely hard to access land for a young person, unless it's one of the richest counties in the United States. So I'm a little bit like a glitch in the system because I skipped a generation. There's no father figure or matriarch that's like governing. It was just kind of like her and I against the world. She was like a woman in a cattle industry making her way as an Italian American. It was just, I learned a lot from her about what not to do and also what to do. And my first experience was just seeing how commercial agriculture was working in the States. So a cow-calf operation, and how food was it was a second thought in this commercial operation. Like, we weren't raising meat to eat or to share. We were raising calves to sell at a feedlot. And then that was our income that we would use to then go buy food. And so it started becoming a little dissonant to me. And I ended up actually finding a job in Hawaii at a regenerative ranch on Molokai, and which had its own slaughterhouse. And it was where I learned a lot of like biodynamic principles, but also about just like cow rotation and low stress livestock handling. And so after a year and a half of working in Hawaii, I came back and really start implementing some of these ideas and seeing the difference of like, oh, this is how we can really be more in tune and not just look at, these life forms as just commodities, but actual like ways in which we can interact with place. So the concept of like, how do we exist in a place, still like profit from it, but without commodifying it to a point where like we're just, forgetting that this is a way of life. And the importance of soil health, the importance of community health, rural economy, mental health. These are all aspects that were not something that I learned when I first started in this commercial operation. It was just like producing something and that was it. So the same came to when you actually start doing the numbers, you realize why it's so drastic, because the margins are razor thin with beef operations, but most meat operations. I mean, dairies, there's an extreme amount of overhead in terms of infrastructure. And so you're locked into some of these mindsets. And to me, one way in which we can like break out of it was to diversify as much as we could. One part of the diversification was just like having more grass and a little less cows. So when the droughts hit, we didn't lose money or had to sell at a distressed, rate. And the other one was creating a market so we could actually sell our beef directly to people. So we didn't have those fluctuations at the auction or being told what kind of price our animals were worth, by actually creating value. And so that then helped us establish relationships with customers. And as we built those relationships, customers wanted to actually come out and see the land that these animals were raised on. And that then helped us start the first farm tours. Those first farm tours then gave into wanting to tell more of a story and talk about transparency and the like how food was actually raised and how much effort it takes. So it wasn't just this idea of this removed idea of seeing a packet of meat at the store, but like how much work goes actually into that pound of meat and how many more things come with it that you don't see as a consumer if you don't have access to agricultural landscapes. And so that really is what eventually I think led us to want to really start hosting people. And it was at the same time when Hipcamp, this platform that I think started around 10, 12 years ago in California, we were one of the pilot ranches that they were experimenting. And Hipcamp is this platform similar to Airbnb. They started initially just listing public campgrounds and it slowly got into private. And so they are a listing platform for any individual with land access to list low impact camping and to generate revenue through that. So we started offering access to people to actually not just come and buy our beef, but actually buy our beef and cook it in the same grass, in the same places where the animals were being raised, and to experience the beauty of what those animals were providing. So it's just like the first time we were actually we were able to monetize ecosystem services, and something that was not a thing. Like when I first got to the ranch 15 years ago, it was just a product that was being exported. This time we are actually like trying to, instead of just like having that main extractive, food, fiber, water from an agricultural system, there was more a regenerative sense of like, how do we build soil? And if we're building soil, there's going to be more biodiversity, there's going to be more water retention, there's going to be more wildflowers, there's going to be more bird populations. And like, how people love that, people enjoy that, versus just like a flat field or just a complete denuded hillside, in late August. Now it's like a flower field and the trees are healthy, and we're seeing like new growth, like different successions of growth, in trees, not just like your old oaks, with no little oaks beneath them. And also more migratory birds, because there was more food and there were more shelter, more habitat. And so that is really, I think, what helped us also be proud of what we were offering. And again, not just being like, oh, people are going to come here, we're going to charge them a certain amount, we'll deal with the liability, and then we're just going to make this money. It was just like the holistic approach of wanting to share, the same joy that we were experiencing because of our privilege, because we had access to land and so many people don't. And like, it has such tremendous benefits for people. And like, everybody that's come out like has witnessed that. And so even if they don't eat meat, they can see the effects of what herbivores managed properly on landscapes can achieve. I think that's one of the beauties too, is like we're able to tell stories to so many more different people than we just did at farmers markets or just selling wholesale. Okay, that was really broad.
Yeah.
Gives you a sense of how we got here.
So it sounds like it really grew very organically over time, and it was really kind of coming out of your marketing efforts, more or less, like just that storytelling to customers. Would you say that that's still kind of the case? Like, you view the agritourism as a way to support your meat sales, or do you think that there's enough people coming from other walks of life that it's kind of its own independent enterprise at this point?
No, it's definitely still in support of, and I do enjoy it that way. I would say, so the main ranch, the 1,200 acres, when I first came here, of course, like it was too much to sustain. So eventually, when my great aunt passed away, I was able to retain a separate parcel of 100 acres, and that large ranch sold. So I was left with the few select mother cows that I had been like, breeding and raising for the last 10 years. And so I started with a small herd of 40 animals, and then just trying to find land. And so for the last 8 years, this 100 acres has been my home base. It was just raw land. So now we're living in tiny homes. We put a septic in, and then we just start planting trees, creating habitat, and finding land where we can like still manage our animals. But diversity was key. So, how do you make a livelihood? Even with 40 animals, it takes us around 1,000 acres to finish 40 head a year. And so that's like just been piecemealing really a lot of marginal land, that hasn't been taken up by all the other producers that are in the area. When COVID hit, all our wholesale shut down. And that was the big impetus, that we had already worked on the old property on the 1,200 acres with Hipcamp a little bit, but really we're like, we need to make ends meet, and we have meat to sell. And so we just started, and our first campsite, we started with 5 campsites. And it was, as soon as people could get out of the house, they could social distance out here. It was open air, and we had a lot of families come out, and it was just a really good experience. I mean, the platform Hipcamp like has improved tremendously when it was first unrolled to now. It helps you with the scheduling. It has a great calendar. You can put extras now. So there's ways in which people can like really just order everything. You have everything listed, and it just makes, that record keeping a lot easier. They also offer insurance through the platform, which was been one of the biggest hardships we've had, especially now, is finding somebody that is able to give us a whole umbrella policy for how diverse we are as a small farm. Because we're a cattle operation, we do ecosystem services, we have like fire mitigation, we use sheep for fire mitigation contracts, we do ecological grazing with the cattle, and then we do agritourism. And most agencies, they don't know how to, in which category to put us. So that's one of the things that I feel like we're trying to push in California, at least, is like, how do we get insurance companies to cover diverse farms? And it's like, I don't know how else to make a living if we weren't diverse. And
Right.
so I would say that's one of the biggest challenges we're facing right now. Um,
So, so you mentioned liability insurance, which you're getting through the platform that you're using. What are some of the other like just logistical considerations? Like, is there zoning or there regulations? I'm sure that's all different county by county, but like, how would someone kind of even get started setting something up?
okay, so how we got started by, we had a field that was not incredibly productive and had a separate entrance from where we live. And
Mm,
so we're like, we're going to focus on that area. Like, it's not that productive. It had a separate entrance. We don't have to necessarily like, have to hear people. So it's just like, it's some like a good experimental area. It was like 7 acres. And we just slowly the road was good going in. Um, and it's only seasonal. So we only offer it during the dry months. So between spring, summer, fall, we close with the first rains. That also keeps it pretty sustainable in terms of like, if you're not a person or a people's person, like you don't enjoy interacting with people that ask stupid questions or like lots of text messages, I don't think this is for you. There's a lot of correspondence, and you can automate a lot of that over time, but it's going to take a couple of years to refine it. And
mm,
so at this point, we've automated a lot of it. And I'll tell you more about that. But
yeah.
just that was the initial thing. It's just like, we had these 7 acres, we experimented, people start coming. Um, and just we had good experiences, but we were also like very present. Like, we would meet with every person that would come, we would talk to them, we would show them the campsite. We would even like, the first year we were like delivering firewood or a steak, and talking to them for like 15, 20 minutes. Um, so I don't know. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So what other how about like just in terms of infrastructure, like or do you have porta potties or composting toilet for people or like a shower or people just straight up like expecting a camping experience?
So we stick to like primitive campsites, pack in, pack out. Initially, there was just a fire ring and a mowed campsite. Um, we brought water to a couple campsites, and then we had a porta potty. Um, that's it. So it was just like some poly pipe, some risers, a porta potty, and really, I think just being able to figure out like, go out on your own land and like, where would you want to camp? Like, what are some cool spots? We are also surrounded by this estuary, so we're close to this tidal marsh that actually you can canoe off to the ocean. So it's a really special place. So it's like close to the marsh, and so a lot of the campsites have access for canoe access or kayak. Um, and again, we started with liability, so we had a liability waiver. We use DocuSign, so we would just like send that up with them. Again, insurance covers what they can. If somebody wants to sue you, you still are going to have to like deal with that. We haven't had any issues. We used bird names for all our campsites. It tends to attract more birders. Birders are incredible people. They're very calm, respectful folks. And
That's
I
the
think,
niche people want.
set up your campsites. Like, our campsites can't really accommodate RVs, big, like maybe camper vans, a couple, but it's usually like car camping or actually camping, cyclists. So it's like, think of who you're attracting based on the space that you're providing.
Mhm.
Um, and then start with like very low hanging fruit. So like I said, like just a toilet, some water, and really focus on the beauty of the place. Think of winds, think of shade, um, poison oak, ticks, all those things. Timing, also when you think you have more bandwidth. So we started with like literally just the website, some good pictures, the toilet, the water, and a tractor to mow. Then eventually we started getting better with like, oh, the liability waivers, automated that with DocuSign. Then we started a farm shop. So the farm shop is people now, instead of meeting with us, they go into the farm shop. The gate code is in there. So they have to go there just to get the gate code. The gate code changes every few months. And then once they're in there, we start offering products. So we have like a whole chest freezer of like lamb, beef. We have our eggs there, duck, goose, chicken. Then now we started making like hot sauces and jams. Then we started offering like focaccia. Like it started growing and growing, but it was like they can buy their wood there. And it's like a central area. And we only now interact with them by text or with a platform. Only if they ask for something special or like we really like jive with them, then we might meet, we might do a farm tour. But if that's all extra and only based on bandwidth, but just like how to automate something where, just the interaction is minimized. And through the platform, people are vetted somewhat on the platform, but there's also a review process. So if somebody's left trash or hasn't like kept it up, you can complain. The other thing too is like our cancellation policy is up to 30 days. So if somebody, is like changes their mind, which happens a lot in the Bay Area because everybody's really busy out here, like we just honor their stay at a different time. So being like, oh, you can't make it this weekend, no worries. We will honor your stay at a different date. And that's really kept us, booked up during the season.
What is your
And I think, yeah.
I was curious like what your vacancy or your occupancy rate is.
At this year we had an event with REI and that really put us on the map a little more. So this year it increased probably to like 80%, 85%.
Impressive. And what do you charge?
Our cheapest one is $60 and the most expensive is $120 a night. So we're like one of the most affordable places to camp on the coast.
Yeah.
Because we're 5 minutes from the beach, like 5 minutes from bakery. So like, location matters. I think dynamic pricing is something to do if you have the time, which means like, during like the holidays, like just like it's more expensive. During the weekdays, it's less, but it's you changing that. And there's ways of automating that too. I'm not there yet, but that's like something also where you can like increase revenue just enough. I think the value add really brings something where people like just start talking about it. Like for 1 year, we had goats that we were milking. We were making gelato, and with just flavors from the ranch. So it was like plum or blackberry or sage, and people were losing their shit. They would come and like they were coming just for that and then staying. But they were coming for the gelato. So there's ways in which you can do it, and like the liabilities on these things, there's products that are safe. Like everything that we sell, we eat. Like my family eats, so it's not. Again, I feel comfortable at these levels. Again, just to be completely transparent, we're looking at like we're bringing in $20,000. It's not an incredible amount, but it really helps keep things going, and it's allowed. Yeah. So it's less. It's a lot less than what our main business does. So the agritourism piece is like this additional piece where people can talk about it. We've had, sales of cow shares thanks to it. We've had word of mouth, and slowly, we can start putting in events that we might want to do as soon as we have, a little more time. So I think the agritourism just allows you to like market, experiment with different things, but just really start very simply. Then you can add even like, glamping tents or doing, and then start have like different rates for people. And but I think start slow, and it doesn't have to look, I think, great. I saw a question from somebody about like, I can't maintain my fences. That I mean, it depends, how you're interacting with the people. The people are looking for, most people are interacting or looking for like a genuine experience. They're trying to come out here to relax, you know? I mean, we've had people that like texted me at like 10 p.m. and they're like, the dogs are barking. I'm like, yes, those are livestock dogs. They're my neighbors. He has sheep. This is what happens. And they're like, how long are they going to bark for? Or like, there's raccoons at night. So there you have the nightmare, for sure, people, or like the high end. And I think that's where, like, based on your pricing, the higher your pricing, the higher the expectations. So the more you offer, the more you're going to probably attract people that are high maintenance. And so based on who you are, that might be something you really enjoy. I don't. And so that's why we keep our prices low. So then I'm like, if somebody complains, at $58, like the cheapest thing you can stay at is 200. So, you can just go there.
Right. Take it to the Super 8 if you don't like it here. Yeah. Yeah, but I am still worried about nightmare guests. Like, that's the thing that would make me feel nervous about doing this, is like, what do you do when, I mean, like, fire safety is something that would make me really nervous. Like, people setting, like, setting campfires in conditions that are not, or like feeling I would have to always police what people are doing. Do you find that, I mean, it sounds like people have mostly been chill, but like, how do you deal with those circumstances when they pop up?
I think, providing everything people need to be safe. And one is just like a really detailed intro message. Not that everybody reads it, but still you have it and it's said, and it just being like, hey, check in with us about fire. There's going to be a no fire zone. We're also on the coast. Stays a little more wet. We also graze around the campsites in late summer. So people love that. And also it helps us with like fire risk. But we have like fire buckets and hoses like ready to go. And we tell people, to like put out the fires with water, all these things here. And so far it's been well respected.
Have you ever had to kick somebody out?
We haven't had that issue yet. Like the worst that we've had is like, like a poor review that we contested based on just, we all have different experiences. Um, or somebody, driving in our field at night, like thinking that that was a road, and literally they're just driving in a field. And, you're definitely going to be annoyed if you do this more than a year. There's going to be moments that you're like, I don't know. I still think it's worth it because you have these like positive experiences where somebody just like, you're like, wow, I can't believe, my kid just ate a steak, and like we're literally sitting in the same place that these animals are raised. And then the cows are literally just over there, and they go visit with them and then come back to their campsite. And it's just like that experience, it just impacts them. And so to me, that memory, offsets somebody that like leaves trash.
Yeah.
Or maybe, doesn't pay for the extra people they said they would. So like we're not policing maybe as much as we should, but also like, gonna give trust to get trust. And I think, again, setting it up in context, like talking about who we are, in terms of like our goals, our regenerative mission. Our main motto is like food, ecology, and culture. So talking about that, offering props in terms of like, really cheap firewood, or like just being like making people feel at home. So then if they feel at home, they're probably less likely to trash it. I think that kind of empowerment of being like, look, we're giving you access to like a really beautiful place, and you can't find this. Like, it's no trespassing signs all over here. There's no public trails. We're one of the few that offer it. So our location also, I think, brings people in that are grateful for the ability to be here. And I think that gratefulness like really does help. So like, I think focusing on that aspect more than signs telling you what not to do, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally.
That's would be my strategy.
Promoting a culture of care. And yeah, I, yeah, I think what you just said about just people being able to like eat a steak and be like in the environment that it came from, I think that's something that a lot of us who are engaged in this work day to day like really take for granted sometimes. And even like I mean, I know this is true for me on my ranch. Like, I see a lot of the mess and the imperfection and the things that I'm behind on or that don't look how they should look or how I would like them to look. And I'm just like, oh my God, I could never I could never charge somebody money to stay here. But I think the flip side of that is like you kind of get blinded to just like all of the beauty that you're immersed in all the time. And I find that whenever I bring guests to the ranch, they're just like astounded. I mean, they're not looking at like my weird stack of tires by the shop or whatever. They're just like looking at the sunset. They're like, wow, this is so beautiful. Like you have so much space. You can't see another house in any direction. Like those are things that most people just don't get to like have as part of their day to day. So it is really cool to share that. Do you have like retention? Like, have you seen the same folks coming back year after year now that you've done this for a while, or is it still kind of fresh faces all the time?
I would say maybe 15-20% of people come back. And the cool thing is like they try different campsites. And so
Mm-hmm.
every couple of years we try to like change something or even move. That's the cool thing is like these just mowed areas. So we'll like move a campsite and mow a different area and then, let the other one rest and then plant around it. So right now with the local RCD, the Resource Conservation District, we just plant around 400 shrubs and trees in order to just like also show people like how it's going to change over time. Like so adding these things and being like your support is allowing us to actually like pay for some of this work. And so again, it's like the continuum of being like if you live in the area and come back here 20 years, like those campsites are going to change and you're going to have shade in 20 years or even less. And I think that's just like a cool way of like relating to place. And that also helps with word of mouth. um, in terms of regulations, just because I know we're getting close to 10:45, at the moment, agricultural production zones, this is where we are, at least in Marin County, have principally permitted uses. And agritourism is still in this like gray area in terms of what that looks like. So we're calling it low impact camping, which is different than camping. And there's like the KOAs that have like a huge lobbying group, and like if you are a campsite and defined as a campsite, like you need like bonds and like huge septic systems, different types of commercial insurance. It's a whole different thing, and that's where the confusion lies. There's no real definition in the California legislature for low impact camping. Now Hipcamp is lobbying for this in order to define it, and they're lobbying at county levels as well. So you can check in with them to see where they stand in your region. Check in with Hipcamp, I mean, or you're with your local ombudsman. Like he's great in our area, and so he also is like trying to just kind of hear what the county wants to do, and then what other things there are. So it's also based on like your easements if you have one. And again, though, I I'm like, if people want young people to exist in the current agriculture economic system, I don't know how, in at least in our area here, you can exist without being diversified. And agritourism is a necessary thing. Now, if this agritourism starts bringing in 70% of the gross income and everything else becomes a secondary idea, then to me, that's more like you are than a hospitality business. You're not an agriculture. And I think that's where there should be some buffer. But if it's like a supplemental piece and it's important for basic education to bring that extra income to make ends meet at the end of the year, I think it's a very viable thing that does not need a permit. Again, I am saying that with the idea of like we're seasonal, so we let these areas rest, so there isn't heavy impact. We only mow, we haven't put gravel, the toilet leaves. Like in the winter, you can tell people have been there. And I think that's what low impact means. We also move our fire pits, every year from place to place. So I just want to make that like, I think there's ways of doing this that you can, it's like using animals. It's like, okay, for a couple of years, we had people in this area and we had like high disturbance, and then we're going to rotate. And then that's
Right, and
that's the
allow
same
for
concept. Like
recovery.
so think of that on how you can place people around and just look at it as like a management aspect of your whole system. So again, legislation's being defined. I think it's up to you if you want to be part of that conversation. A lot of times with the county, as soon as you start arguing for certain pieces, then you're on the map. So it depends. I mean, our insurance found us, they dropped us early spring. We've been with them for 10 years. They dropped us because we're too diversified, because we started putting stuff on on our website, and they're like, oh, I'm like, we've been doing this. You knew we were, but they couldn't. But that's happening in California a lot. A lot of insurance people are just dropping anything they can that has any minimal liability. So that's the only challenge, at least here in California at the moment. We are still covered under Hipcamp, but we're just figuring out how to have coverage for the animals and general liability in general.
Right, the wraparound. So there's another question in the chat about liability and Hipcamp. So the question is Hipcamp covering all your liability? Sounds like no. Or is it just for the campers? I'm worried that a smoker will light something on fire accidentally. Also my worst fear. And curious if Hipcamp covers property damage as well.
They cover like maybe up to 5,000 in damages, but it has to be specific to the campsites, and the camper has to be registered with the platform.
Okay.
So it has to be somebody that has gone through their platform, and that's what they cover. But it's very specific. So no anything that's not under that policy, and you can go on their website, on the Hipcamp website, and they have a list of things that they cover.
How about other
in terms of smoking stuff like? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Finish.
Just we haven't had issues with smokers or. So I think in the beginning, to understand what you're offering and how people are interacting with your space, it's like, I don't know, putting animals out, like just you make a fucking map, and then you verify if the map you made is enough acreage for those cows to eat for a day or two, right? And then you adjust it. So like in the beginning, until you're confident about like your skills of fence setting and like timing, like you're going to probably like spend some time with your campers to understand like who are your clientele. And then based on that, start knowing like, you can deny people. You get a brief bio, but it tells you, if it's like a family or just a couple. So just, I think, be present in the beginning, and then as you automate it, as you feel more comfortable, start automating certain elements.
Yeah, that's great advice. That makes a ton of sense. Have you used any of the other, like I know that Tenter is a platform I've seen around. Have you used any other platforms? Just you've been with Hipcamp and happy with that?
Yeah.
We're not getting sponsored by Hipcamp, just FYI. Sorry, guys.
No, I haven't used anything else. I think we listed on Airbnb, but then their fees start becoming a little unreasonable, and is for a small trailer that we were renting. So we just stick with Hipcamp. The great thing, yeah, with some of these platforms is it's like, expectations are lower. So it's a lot easier with the people that are going through there. And then Hipcamp takes 10%.
Okay, 10%. That's just a flat percentage.
Flat fee. Yeah.
How are you like advertising this, or just traffic is getting driven through Hipcamp's website?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't, it was more organic. I mean, we had a following from our farmers market and for being in business for a while. And then when we started offering that, people really jumped on. Like I said, it was during COVID. And then, yeah, the big, it was just an event with REI, the Summer of Magic they were doing. And now it really just kind of put us on the map. So I think doing strategic partnerships like that, once you get established, are like really important. And then it's just word of mouth. You get reviews and.
Yeah, just slowly builds over time. Well, it's come to the audience Q&A section of the hour. So if y'all have more questions, please throw them in the chat now. Let's see. I have a few questions here. I have a question here about how to do agritourism at a scale that's actually profitable. So I think you've spoken to this a little bit. Like I know that this is not like the enterprise that's keeping the farm afloat. It's more of a supportive thing, but it sounds like it's pretty low input, like I'm assuming your margins are pretty good on this enterprise. Is there a
Yeah, I
particular?
mean, if we're grossing 20,000, I mean, it's costing us maybe 5 to make it happen. So
Yeah, that's pretty
yeah,
dang
I mean,
good.
again, your return's higher and your risk is higher, right? It's kind of like it always goes hand in hand.
Right. What? Tell me more about the. What do you think are the risky parts? If there is there anything we haven't talked about already?
Uh, the unpredictable nature of humans.
Yeah, just
I
not knowing
just
if people are
I
going to
think
show up or yeah.
yeah, I think you create good energy, you create a good space, you create an environment that's very clean, and so people come into it and just like want to be respectful. And so I just want to be like reminding people of that. And
Hmm.
then based on the reviews, so really focusing on good reviews in the beginning, so going a little above and beyond, and then laxing a little bit, but still like I think our products have become a lot more quality and consistent over the years too. So when people come here, they know that in summer they're going to get really good meat, and in spring they know they can only come here to get some goose eggs because otherwise it only happens in March and April. So also like start creating these little things that people look forward to, and you have different clientele for those periods is pretty cool as well.
What do people do? Like, are people hanging out on the ranch all day? Do they leave and go do other stuff and they're just sleeping there, or you just have like random people walking around?
Combination. I mean, during the fall migration, the raptor migration, people are here just birding. A lot of
Birding.
people are going out kind of on the Estero, the estuary that we have. So going just out for a little kayak ride, um, and then going out for the day again. It's a cheap place. We get some bikers that stop, like bicyclists,
Hmm.
but really just like relaxing. I mean, it's very quiet and peaceful, and people, the city's only an hour and a half, so it's a good respite.
Hmm. And do you kind of just let people like wander about? Are there go or no go areas?
No, there's no go areas. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
for sure. So unless we're offering a farm tour, it's pretty much they have these like 7 acres to themselves, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, so they just have
Um,
this fine like plot of
yeah.
land and that's it. I have a question in the chat here. Do you ever offer farm tours or other farm activities for an added fee? You mentioned there was like an add-on menu when people book.
Yeah. So the add-ons are on there, and it changes seasonally, but just so people can like pre-order. But then also when they come to the shop, I'm like, hey, there's a whole list of things you can order or you can buy at the shop itself.
Mhm. And those are
So
products. Like,
yeah. So like they can buy like ground beef, but like we did steak packages for a while, but it's just hard because sometimes we have like ribeye, sometimes we have more New Yorks or flat irons. So it just depends. I'm like, just come and see what you want. A lot of this stuff thaws, beforehand, or just trust me and I'll have a package for you. So we do stuff like that too. Um, or like morning scones and apricot jam if it's apricot season, things like that.
yeah. And how
I
about
mean,
like,
I think of activities we haven't done much. We tell people like there's cool places to go, but we haven't done activities yet. We were thinking of doing like maybe a pizza night, so like cooking events,
mhm.
but we haven't had the bandwidth. I have a 2-year-old, and so the last 3 years have been wild.
Good
And we've
luck
only been
fixing
doing Hipcamp for 5 years here, so it started during COVID, yeah. And then this year we're taking it a little more seriously, and then next year I think we're going to add some events.
it. Hmm.
But it's like during the big holidays that's the thing is like start with like gathering people, getting like good reviews, getting continuation, then people are like, what else do you have? Like don't put everything at once, like do it over the course of like 10 years, get comfortable with things, figure out like your rhythm when you're more available, because like in spring it's insane moving animals to all these different contracts. Then now it kind of slows down, so like September, October for us would be like when we want to maybe do an event. um, a few things that we changed to, like now you can book the whole property. That was a new thing instead of just like one campsite. So people like want to do a birthday for like 40 people, they can just book the whole property and then they just kind of hang out. Then we might do some like catering for that. Um, so there's ways I think that you can start playing around with how you create it.
Hmm. We have a question in the chat. How do you convey the off-limit areas? Is that like you just hand people a map?
Yeah, map, and then we actually have some physical fences that kind of work in our favor. So the way this like strip of 7 acres is delineated is like there's an upper fence that you wouldn't cross, people have, but I like 1%. At this point, we've had thousands of people here, and I would say like the majority, if not everybody, has been very respectful. Like I want to believe, and I still believe people are good, and you still get the pain in the ass people, or just when you're cleaning toilets too, like people are nasty sometimes. So that's why the sooner you're on something, give them the opportunity to like text you so they can tell you if something's wrong, if there's an issue, and just be as responsive as possible. I think that's where I'm like, if you're not willing to be on your phone or be responsive, or there's like lack of ability to communicate, it's going to maybe complicate some things, because most of the time people just want to be heard. I guess that's how I have to say. And then once you hear them out, they're like less, yeah. And then the sooner you respond to somebody, the more like, oh, okay, somebody's like listening to me. Okay, and they're going to deal with it. But clean toilet is like critical. If somebody like goes there and it's clean, they love it. A lot of reviews on like everybody likes how clean we are. So
makes sense. Yeah, there's nothing worse than a dirty porta potty. It's like literally the grossest thing ever. So makes sense. We got another question in the chat here about taxes. Is the income you make from camping considered agricultural income and taxed that way, or is it treated as some other type of income?
We're trying to figure that out. So Hipcamp, you can do it automatically through the platform, and they'll take a short-term rental fee. Or you can also declare it as income. It just depends what, talk to your accountant depending on what makes more sense for you. Since it's still technically a gray area, it is up to you how you declare it.
All right, clear as mud.
I hope that's helpful, but definitely, I mean, there's ways in which, you just, again, we're fucking farmers. So I'm like, that's the thing. It's like, if you're a real estate developer, I don't know. But as a farmer, you can figure it out, because we got to make shit work. And I think that's where I'm like, when I'm arguing with anybody around here, I think one thing before I forget is like, definitely have a good relationship with your neighbors. We have 4 neighbors, and it's really like thanks to them. So like, if somebody wants to fuck you, like they can. And like, that's where you're going to have issues. Like if somebody called the county, we would have to then go through the litany of things, and given that it's still a gray area, but we have really good relationships with our neighbors. We made sure to make clear that, if people are kayaking, like the banks that are not ours are off limits. Do not get out of your kayaks. And, we had a couple incidences we resolved with our neighbors. And since then, we haven't had any issues. And we're like in really good standing. We do also community dinners with all our neighbors here. So like once a month we meet and we gather. Like, yeah, I think that's also very important to state. I feel like a lot of ranchers don't want people. Like there's a reason they live out here. There's a reason they have gates. And so like, you being the asshole that's new in the air trying to make a living, because they're living off of like, other things from the past when things were cheaper. And just like creating that understanding and creating a rhythm that's for everybody in your community is also an important piece if this is going to be something you do.
Yeah, just being
and all yeah, and that goes for because like people are like, oh, you're opening yourself to like somebody coming in and seeing in a species that needs protect, I don't know, like red-legged frog or anything like that. And I'm like, we're also very mindful of the species that are there. And like, for example, if we have a nesting bird like a hawk coming in, we'll like close that campsite. Like we're also aware of like other things that are living here, and we're not trying to detract from their existence. And I think that's also part of what we do, and people understand that. And so the platform also makes it easier to just like close something down, refund people if something like that happens. So, but there's like an active management regarding the ecology of the thing and the social piece with people.
Any other questions? This is last call for questions in the chat. Man, Guido, I can't wait to get down there and see it. I'm headed down to True Grass Farms beginning of October, so yeah, I'm really excited to check it out in person. Do you ever get people that want to like um come work with you for a day? Is that something you'd ever
We've
want to do?
had a couple, but it's too much. We're
Yeah,
not
it's
there yet.
too much wrangling. Yeah, Dude Ranch is a whole nother level. Yeah, I am just always surprised by like the mundane things in my life that other people find interesting. So I just think that there's lots of opportunities to like potentially monetize. Um, yeah, I don't know. I had to
And,
think out
one of the
how
benefits,
like why aren't I charging $25 to have someone watch me do this? I don't know. That's exciting stuff for
the added benefit that is seeing, your own life, like you're saying, or the place in which you live, like the awe and the excitement of others kind of rubs off over time.
hmm.
And it's nice. You're like, wow, maybe I do live in a beautiful place.
Hmm.
Because like once in a while I get glimpses of that, but it's just nice, I think, to be reminded because it's rough. They're also seeing it the best time of year. They're not here in winter when it's like absolutely crazy. Um, but I think that's like an added bonus. I'm also just getting feedback and also it helps you get your shit together. Like you're like, oh yeah, look at that fucking pile of tires. You're like, look at that fencing has been there for 10 years. Like, let me just move this out of the way so there's like an extra parking space, or anything like that. And just there's a bet. It's like, having guests to your house. Like you clean your house.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
part of the deal. Kind of nice. Like,
Well, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation. I really can't wait to come down and see it in person in a few weeks. We will send out a link to your Hipcamp listing in the wrap up so people can check out your amazing facilities, your amazing and simple facilities. It was very inspiring to me for sure to look at. Um, and the recording of this session will also go out to everyone that's registered. That's also always posted on our website with all of our previous lowdowns, which are all full of wonderful information from equally awesome guests. So you can go check that out. And our next lowdown is October 10th, selling the bits and pieces. We're talking about heads and hides with Lacey Jean from Fireheart Homestead, and we're also going to have Kimberly from Living Sky Tannery joining us next month as well. So hopefully we see you again soon. Thank y'all so much.